For 5 years I had lost my sight and lived in darkness. Today I could finally see again. Eager to share my joy, I rushed home to my husband and son, only to find my husband holding my best friend in his arms. At the desk, my son was writing something to my husband, his small hand moving with confidence. "Dad, when are you finally kicking that blind witch out? I want Aunt Julia to be my mom." Then, as if nothing were wrong, he turned to me and said, "Mom, all my classmates get dropped off at school in luxury cars with chauffeurs. You should buy Dad one too." "Fine. I'll grant your wish. Get out of my house. Go be someone else's son." When my son Neil was 5, I lost my sight saving him. That darkness lasted 5 years. But after I went blind, my best friend Julia started coming over more often to take care of me. My husband, Bradley, wasn't particularly successful, but he made up for it with his kindness. He had always been gentle and attentive, never wavering in his care for me. He looked after Neil with dedication, and Neil, in turn, was a sweet and well-behaved child. Those 5 years hadn't been unbearable. This time I had spent over a month in the hospital, undergoing treatment and rehabilitation. Miraculously, my eyesight had returned. I could see again. Eager to share the good news, I rushed home, imagining the joy on Bradley's face, the excitement in Neil's eyes. But the moment I stepped through the door, I saw Bradley wrapped in Julia's arms. Neil sat on the floor, casually playing with his building blocks. The housekeeper swept the floor nearby. Unfazed. No one looked surprised. As if this was normal. I stood frozen at the doorway. Bradley was the first to notice me. He hadn't expected me to see him. That much was clear from the way his brows knit together in irritation. And yet he made no attempt to pull away from Julia's embrace. Instead, his voice remained as gentle as ever, even carrying a trace of surprise. "Honey, you're back? Did Lily bring you home? Why didn't you let me know you were getting discharged? I would have come to pick you up. Be careful, walk slowly. Don't hurt yourself." Lily, he was talking about my assistant. He was good at this act. So this was how he had been these past 5 years, feigning devotion while betraying me right in my own home, hiding behind the excuse that I couldn't see. When he finished speaking, he cast a glance at the housekeeper. Only then did she put down her work and walk over to support me. I took a slow, deep breath. Then I steadied myself. Suppressing the rage boiling inside me, I pretended I was still blind, allowing the housekeeper to guide me forward. I wanted to see just how much more they had hidden from me. That was when I saw it. The same look of disgust on Neil's face mirroring his father's. Julia's smug, victorious gaze, filled with open mockery. She even had the audacity to flaunt her position in front of me. With a sickening sweetness, she leaned against Bradley's shoulder and pressed a silent kiss to his cheek. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to keep my expression neutral. Then, just as I always had, I smiled in their direction. "I was in the hospital for a whole month. And none of you came to see me. I missed you. Neil, why haven't I heard your voice? Have you been behaving yourself?" Julia loosened her hold on Bradley and smiled gently before beckoning Neil over. Then, in a voice filled with warmth, she said, "Selena, Neil's been playing with his blocks. He's been very good lately. You don't have to worry." Neil eagerly ran into her arms, snuggling against her as he turned to face me. With clear reluctance, he muttered, "Mom." Then, without another word, he pulled out a notebook, scribbled something down, and handed it to Bradley and Julia. I watched as their eyes skimmed over his message. And then I read it myself. "Why is that blind witch back again? Dad, when are you finally kicking her out? She's so annoying. I want Aunt Julia to be my mom." The words blurred before my eyes. For a moment my mind went blank. Despair settled deep into my bones. But still I forced myself to stay calm. Julia's smile widened with delight as she gave Neil a little push, urging him on. As if suddenly remembering something, Neil turned to me and spoke with self-righteous confidence. "Mom, all my classmates' dads drive luxury cars when they drop them off at school. Only my dad drives a regular sedan. Do you know how embarrassing that is? They look down on me and won't even play with me. You should buy Dad a nice car too, then they won't bully me anymore." I swallowed my fury, forcing a smile. "Neil, is there anything else you want?" Neil thought for a moment before adding, just as entitled, "Mom, Aunt Julia takes care of us every day and it's really hard on her. You should get her a gift. Why don't you buy the villa next door and give it to her? Then he looked up at Julia expectantly as if waiting for praise. A bitter laugh echoed in my mind. So eager to please her. Was he trying to be her perfect little son? Julia, overjoyed, hugged him and planted 2 silent kisses on his cheeks. Though she tried to mask her excitement, I caught the way her gaze flickered longingly toward the villa next door. Still, she put on a modest act, shaking her head with faux humility. "Oh, Selena, you don't have to do that. I take care of you all because we're close. I could never accept something so expensive." Disgust churned in my stomach. I turned to her with a warm, admiring smile. "I knew you weren't the kind of person who would let money sway you." Then I looked at Neil and reprimanded him sternly. "Neil, how could you insult Aunt Julia by bringing up money and houses? That's incredibly rude. You must never say things like that again." Julia's smile stiffened. Neil pouted, unhappy with my response but quickly latched onto something else. "Then Mom, are you buying the car or not?" My voice turned sharp. "At your age you're already obsessed with showing off. What will you be like when you grow up? Have I not taught you better? A person should stand on their own feet. If your friends only care about appearances, then they aren't worth keeping around." I had been blind for 5 years. And in those 5 years, while I had been unable to guide him, Bradley and Julia had shaped my son into this, till he was young. Maybe with discipline I could correct his ways. But before I could say another word, Neil suddenly threw himself onto the floor, wailing at the top of his lungs. Tears streamed down his face. But his eyes, when he looked at me, were filled with something I never thought I'd see in a child. Hatred. My own son, whom I had carried for 9 months, whom I had saved at the cost of my sight, was looking at me with pure, unfiltered loathing. Then in the next instant he grabbed a teacup from the table and hurled it straight at my head. The ceramic struck me with a sharp crack. A warm trickle ran down my forehead. Blood. And he didn't even spare me a glance. Still thrashing on the floor, he screamed, "Dad, get rid of that old witch. I don't want her to be my mom. I want Aunt Julia." Bradley and Julia's faces turned pale. They rushed to cover his mouth, trying to quiet him down. Bradley forced a chuckle. "Sweetheart, don't be mad at him. He's just acting out because he's been bullied at school. He's usually such a good boy." Then, his tone shifting to mild irritation, he added, "Honestly, Selena, you've inherited an entire company. It's just a car. Why are you making such a fuss? Just buy it for him and stop picking a fight." I looked at Neil. His face was red from crying, his body writhing in protest. His gaze still filled with resentment as he glared at me like I was the enemy. I reached up, touching the warm blood trickling down my face. And I felt my heart turn cold inch by inch. This child, my son, was lost to me. Bradley and Julia had made sure of that. 2 days later, it was time for Neil's parent-teacher conference. Julia had been divorced for years and had a daughter, Eva, who was the same age as Neil and attended the same elementary school. Every time there was a conference, Julia would help me carefully select an outfit, apply my makeup, and accompany me. This time was no different. As I stared at my reflection in the mirror, I almost couldn't contain my emotions. My makeup was garish, making me look old and haggard. My hair was styled in a ridiculous mess and my outfit, completely absurd. No wonder every time I attended these meetings, people seemed to treat me with disdain. Julia had been meticulous in her sabotage. I turned to look at her. There was open mockery in her expression, a smug sense of superiority gleaming in her eyes. Yet her voice remained sweet and gentle. "Selena, you're still as stunning as ever. Not like me, I've turned into a washed-up old woman. I envy you so much. You're beautiful and you have such an amazing husband and son." She sighed, adding a quiver to her voice, her tone thick with self-pity. "If only I were as talented and well-off as you. But I wasn't so lucky. I married a scumbag and now Eva has to suffer with me. She's already so grown up and we're still relying on others, living in someone else's home." So that's what this was. She wasn't just complaining, she was testing me, trying to see if she could squeeze another house out of me. For 5 years I had never mistreated her. I had covered all her and her daughter's expenses, and even the house she currently lived in for free was mine. And yet her greed knew no bounds. I glanced at her expectant expression and felt nothing but disdain. Did she really think I was still the same gullible fool? That a few crocodile tears could swindle me out of cars, money, and property? I offered her a casual, Indifferent smile. That's true. I was born with these things. No point envying me, you'll just have to accept reality. Julia's face stiffened, her cheeks flushing red with rage. She clenched her teeth, glaring at me with undisguised resentment. Then, without making a sound, she mouthed the words, "What are you so smug about? You're just a useless blind woman. Your man, your money, it'll all be mine sooner or later." And as if to punctuate her little victory, she spit directly into my cup. He probably thought she had finally gotten the last laugh. Too bad for her. Not only could I see again, I could read lips too. Before heading to the parent-teacher conference, Julia asked to ride in my car. I couldn't be bothered to deal with her any longer, so I simply told her I had to stop by the office first and suggested she take a cab instead. Once she left, I wiped off the hideous makeup she had so kindly applied to my face, changed into a normal outfit, and had my driver take me to the school. When I arrived at the entrance, Julia was already there. Surrounded by a group of parents, she stood in the center of attention, basking in their admiration. I took a closer look, and my lips curled into a cold smile. The designer dress she was wearing, the luxury handbag on her arm, the expensive jewelry glinting under the sunlight. All mine. I had never gifted her these things. She must have stolen them from my closet. Good. Looks like I could add theft to her list of crimes. I signaled my driver to pull the car closer, just in time to hear someone ask, "Mrs. Collins, why did you take a cab today?" Julia flashed a gentle smile. "Oh, I lent my car to my best friend, Selena. You know, she's blind." A wealthy woman nearby wrinkled her nose in distaste. "Mrs. Collins, why do you still associate with someone like that? It's bad enough that she's poor and ugly, but she's also constantly taking advantage of you. Always eyeing your clothes, jewelry, and handbags. She has no shame." Another woman chimed in, frowning. "I heard from my son that Neil says his mother is completely unhinged, always screaming at him and hitting him. How is someone like that even fit to be a mother? Honestly, Mrs. Collins, you and Neil's father are too kind for putting up with her. But let me tell you, it's best to cut ties with people like that before it's too late." A few of the fathers joined in, casually slandering me while lavishing Julia with compliments. Julia must have been thrilled inside, but on the surface she maintained her saintly act. She let out a small sigh, shaking her head. "You shouldn't say that about Selena. Sure, she's not the most attractive, and yes, she does rely on me financially quite a bit. But that's just because life has been hard on her. It's not her fault she was born into a poor family. She's still a good person at heart." I nearly laughed out loud. The words sounded oddly familiar. Oh, right. They were exactly what I had told her earlier. I had my driver pull up right next to them. He got out first, opened the door, and I stepped out, cane in hand. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. And when I glanced toward Julia, I caught the shock flashing across her face. She hadn't expected me to have washed off that ugly makeup. I walked toward the group, and whispers started spreading. "Who is she? I've never seen her at the school before. Look at that car. It's just like the one Mrs. Collins drives. And she's blind too. Could she be Mrs. Morgan? No way. Mrs. Morgan is hideous. This woman is young and beautiful. They can't be the same person." The woman who had called me crazy was the first to approach, seeing how I carried my cane and moved cautiously. She offered a polite smile. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you here for the parent-teacher conference? Which child is yours? We're heading that way as well." I smiled lightly. "My son is Neil." The moment the words left my lips, the entire group fell silent. The first woman to speak, Alex's mother, one of Neil's classmates, stared at me in utter disbelief. "You're Neil's mother? But you look like this." "Mrs. Collins, didn't you say she was ugly?" Julia's face twisted in panic, and she immediately rushed forward, about to say something. But I beat her to it. Feigning surprise, I blinked innocently and offered a sheepish smile. I lightly touched my face as if just now realizing something. "Do I look bad today?" "Julia always does my makeup before I come here, but I accidentally got my face wet before leaving the house. My makeup must have smudged, and since I can't see, I couldn't fix it. I had to come barefaced. I'm so sorry if I look terrible." As soon as I finished speaking, every single person turned to look at Julia. Their eyes widened, their expressions shifting. And Julia? Her face had gone completely stiff. With just 2 sentences, I had completely shattered Julia's carefully crafted image. During the parent-teacher conference, none of the other parents said anything to her face. But I could hear the whispers behind her back. Julia was seething. Thinking I couldn't see, she shot me several venomous glares, her eyes practically burning holes into me. I chuckled inwardly. What, this was too much for her already. We were just getting started. Everything she and Bradley had taken from me, I would reclaim one by one. Let's see if she'd still be smiling by the end. Alex's mother, bless her, was a blunt but kind-hearted woman. She had been sitting next to me throughout the meeting, sneaking glances my way. By the time it was over, Julia was busy making excuses to the other parents, trying to salvage her reputation. Meanwhile, Alex's mom frowned and walked over to me, unable to hold back any longer. "Honey, are you really best friends with Mrs. Collins? You look nothing like what she described. You're actually quite pretty, not at all like the crazy woman she made you out to be. Is she bullying you because you're blind? Just because she comes from a better family doesn't mean you should let her push you around." I couldn't help but smile. I reassured her, "Don't worry. I won't let her bully me anymore. And for the record, my family isn't poor. I have more money than she does." Alex's mom let out a sigh and patted my shoulder, her voice softening. "That's good. And I have to say, your husband seems like a good man. He's stayed by your side all these years. You two should focus on each other and stay away from Julia. You have no idea the things she's been saying about you at school. Is she really your friend? Because she sure doesn't act like one." Seeing how indignant she was getting, I decided not to explain further. I just smiled, letting her vent. Then, I casually steered the conversation toward Neil, asking how he was doing at school. Her face immediately turned hesitant. "Well, from what my son tells me, Neil's been causing quite a bit of trouble. He's constantly getting into fights, bullying other kids. And lately he's been bragging about how Aunt Julia is buying him a luxury car. Honestly, you need to do something about him." "Thank you. I'll make sure to handle it." At the end of our conversation, I asked her for a favor. I wanted to host a dinner at Havenwood Hotel and invite all the parents and their kids as a way to apologize on Neil's behalf. Alex's mom immediately scoffed, shaking her head. "Honey, that's way too much. Havenwood is expensive. With all the kids and parents combined, we're talking about over 40 people. Do you know how much that would cost? Don't waste your money on this." But I simply smiled and insisted. She gave me an exasperated look and sighed, her voice laced with frustration. "No wonder Julia has been walking all over you. Even after everything she's done. You're still kissing up to her. Fine, I won't stop you. If you want to throw your money away to impress her, be my guest. Just don't come crying to me when you regret it." And with that, she spun on her heel and stormed off, clearly done with me. After leaving the school, I took Neil, along with Bradley and Julia's mother-daughter duo, to Havenwood Hotel for dinner. This was the first gift I had prepared for Julia and Bradley, since they loved pretending to be good people. Bradley playing the devoted husband and Julia flaunting her wealthy socialite persona. I would shatter their illusions in front of everyone. I would ruin them. I had personally arranged for the hotel manager to prepare a soundproof private dining room. Once inside, no one would hear anything happening outside. At the same time, I discreetly installed a hidden camera in the corner of the room, perfectly positioned to capture every moment inside. Once the 5 of us were seated, I received word through my wireless earpiece. Lily had just arrived at the hotel with Alex's mom and the other invited parents. I had her on the phone, allowing her to update me in real time. Just as the food was being served in our private room, I heard Alex's mother pull Lily aside and ask, "Sweetheart, I know you. Julia has mentioned you before. You're her assistant, right? I thought Mrs. Morgan was hosting this dinner. Why are you the one leading us in?" Then more voices chimed in. "You've been tricked again. There's no way that Morgan woman can afford this place. She barely gets by, living off of Mrs. Collins' charity. She's just showing off, pretending she's the one paying when it's obviously Julia footing the bill." "Exactly. I told you Mrs. Morgan is completely unhinged. Julia already warned us, she's a jealous, insecure woman who's always making up lies because she's self-conscious about being ugly. She keeps accusing her husband of cheating with Julia and tries to ruin Julia's reputation. And let's be real, just look at her. Julia would never be interested in a man like that. Besides, her husband has been so devoted all these years. And she still isn't satisfied? If I were him, I'd have kicked her out ages ago. Lily, clearly annoyed, cut them off. I am Mrs. Morgan's assistant. And for the record, I don't know Mrs. Collins that well. Silence. Alex's mother hesitated. What? And then the line went dead. That was my cue. Lily had led them into another private dining room, one equipped with a massive high-definition screen placed right in the center. And on that screen, a live feed from my hidden camera. The footage was crystal clear, so sharp you could count the strands of hair on our heads. One by one they turned to look at the screen. And the moment they saw what was happening inside my dining room, they all froze. I glanced in Julia's direction. Right in front of the children, she and Bradley were still all over each other, hands intertwined. Their movements intimate. Julia brazenly leaned against him and kissed his cheek, making no effort to hide their relationship. Then, as if sensing my gaze, Julia suddenly stiffened. Her voice turned wary. Selena, how's your rehab going? Did the doctor say there's any chance of recovery? I shook my head without a word. Julia visibly relaxed, letting out a quiet sigh of relief. Bradley, feeling emboldened, squeezed her hand under the table and scribbled on a small writing pad before showing it to her. I think she's starting to suspect something. She won't give me or Neil any more money. Be careful, don't slip up. But don't worry, she's just a blind woman. She can't do anything. Sooner or later, all her money will be ours. All my money, theirs? A mocking smile curled at the corners of my lips. Because I hadn't bought her a villa, Julia was still stewing in resentment. She grabbed the same writing pad and scribbled furiously, "That blind bitch. Why won't she just drop dead already? It's just a villa and she's too stingy to buy it for me. And lately she keeps embarrassing me in public. I wasted 5 years taking care of her, and all she gave me was a measly $10,000 a month? What, does she think she's doing charity? That bitch belongs in hell." When she finished writing, she glanced at her daughter, Eva. Understanding her cue, Eva reluctantly crawled into my lap, her small arms wrapping around me. In a sweet childlike voice she called out, "Auntie Selena. I used to like this little girl." But now, seeing the same entitlement and resentment flicker across her face, just like her mother, I found myself feeling nothing. "What is it?" I asked coolly. Eva pouted, putting on a pitiful act. "Auntie Selena, I started learning piano recently. When I get better, I'll play for you, okay?" I raised a brow. "Oh, that's wonderful, sweetheart. Do you enjoy playing?" She pouted even more. "I do. But the piano Mom bought isn't very good. And the neighbors upstairs always complain that I'm too loud. They keep knocking on our door and yelling at me to stop." Before I could respond, Julia snapped at her. "Eva, stop telling Auntie Selena about these things." Bradley, on the other hand, chuckled warmly, playing the role of the affectionate stepfather. "It's great that Eva loves piano. Honey, why don't we buy her a better one?" As a reward, Julia leaned in and kissed Bradley's cheek. Eva followed suit, slipping from my lap and wrapping her arms around Bradley's neck, pressing a small kiss to his face. Seeing this, Neil's eyes turned red with jealousy. Desperate for attention, he blurted out eagerly, "Mom, I think we should just buy the villa next door for Aunt Julia. That way, Eva and Aunt Julia won't have to worry about bothering the neighbors. And since they'd be closer, it'd be more convenient too." Then he looked at Julia and Eva expectantly, waiting for their approval. Sure enough, they played along. Eva kissed him on the cheek. Julia followed, giving him another kiss as well. Neil's face lit up, wearing the same smug, satisfied grin that I'd seen countless times on Bradley. I clenched my fists under the table. I was so furious I nearly laughed out loud. These two ungrateful little leeches, did they really think they could just take and I'd let them get away with it? Through my earpiece, I heard the gasps and murmurs of the parents outside. What the hell are Julia and Bradley doing? I can't believe they're actually together. This is disgusting. Wait, wasn't Julia supposed to be rich? Then why is she begging Mrs. Morgan for money? Then, as if piecing everything together, Alex's mother's voice trembled with realization. "So you're really Mrs. Morgan's assistant?" Lily's response was firm. "Yes." Silence. Absolute, stunned silence. Inside the room, I looked at the 4 people in front of me. My husband, my supposed best friend, And the two children they had turned against me. I let out a soft laugh before speaking. Julia, you want a villa. And Eva, you want a piano. Is that right? Julia hesitated this time. After last time, when I had refused to buy her the villa because she had politely declined, she had clearly learned her lesson. Now she didn't dare refuse again. Instead she put on a bashful smile. Yes, but how could I possibly accept something so expensive? It's too much, I smiled. A slow, meaningful smile. Don't be shy. We're friends, aren't we? You've taken care of me and my family for so long. I should be thanking you. Julia's face flushed with excitement. She threw her arms around Bradley, laughing so hard her eyes nearly disappeared. Bradley pulled her in for a kiss, then grabbed the writing pad and scribbled, "This damn blind woman finally did something right for once." Julia nodded in agreement, then turned to glare at me with unmasked contempt. She truly believed she deserved all of this. And she was annoyed that it had taken me this long to hand it over. Just then Neil spoke up. "Mom, what about my car?" A bitter disappointment washed over me. I had once believed he could still be saved. No. I simply smiled and said calmly, "You'll get exactly what you want. You want Julia to be your mother? I'll make that happen." With their wishes granted, the four of them enjoyed the rest of the meal like one big happy family. Right in front of me. Cuddling, whispering, laughing. Completely shameless. Meanwhile, in my earpiece, I could hear the furious voices of the parents outside. When dinner was over, Bradley got up first. "Sweetheart, since Lily's waiting for you outside, I'll take Julia and Eva home." Neil immediately chimed in. "I'll go with them." I picked up my napkin and gently dabbed my lips, then nodded with a soft smile. "Of course. Go ahead." Not long after they left, I stepped out of the private dining room myself. And right outside the door, I ran straight into Alex's mother and the rest of the parents. Every single one of them was wearing an expression of utter disbelief. The moment they saw me, Alex's mother grabbed my hand, her face a mix of awkwardness and frustration. "Oh, thank God, Mrs. Morgan, you're finally out." I smiled. "So, how did you all enjoy dinner?" She let out a sharp scoff. "Oh, it was quite the feast, all right. And listen, honey, I owe you an apology. I completely misjudged you. But you cannot let those two scumbags get away with this. No cars, no villas. They're pushing their luck, and I swear, I'll personally make sure those two filthy cheaters get what they deserve." The other parents quickly chimed in, eager to correct their past misjudgments. "Mrs. Morgan, we're so sorry for believing them before. We had no idea Julia and Bradley were such shameless parasites." "That's right. Honey. Don't be foolish, they're only after your money. And Bradley? That bastard should be kicked out with nothing but the clothes on his back." I let them vent their anger, waiting for the moment to reveal my final card. Then with a calm smile I said, "Actually, my eyesight has recovered. But I'd appreciate it if you all kept that a secret for now. Don't worry, I will make them pay." For a moment, there was silence. Then, Alex's mother let out a deep breath and squeezed my hand tightly. Good. And if you need anything at all, just say the word. We're all behind you." I smiled warmly. "Thank you. This was just the beginning." The next day, I had a divorce agreement drawn up. One that included Bradley's written confession of infidelity and his agreement to leave the marriage with nothing. Lily glanced at the document and asked, "Do you really think he'll sign this?" I let out a soft chuckle. "Bradley is an idiot. Just tell him it's a car purchase contract, he won't even read it. He'll sign it right away." Then I casually asked, "Have you picked the car yet?" Lily nodded. "Yes, we went with the latest Lamborghini model. I'm sure he's going to love it." "Perfect. That's the one." And just as expected, the moment Bradley laid eyes on the car, his face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. He was so excited he didn't even bother glancing at the contract, he just grabbed the pen and signed. One fish had taken the bait. Now, it was time for the other one. I called Julia over, putting on a reluctant and embarrassed expression as I spoke. "Julia, I finally settled on a villa for you. I even negotiated with the seller and the price is set at $2 million. But I just bought Bradley a car recently and now I'm short on cash. I still need about $500,000 to finalize the deal." Julia's face immediately changed. Panic flickered in her eyes before she quickly grabbed my hand, feigning concern. Oh, Selena, you've done so much already. You don't need to worry about the rest. I'll find a way to handle it. I let out a troubled sigh before finally reluctantly agreeing. Then I gave Lily a discreet signal. Our private investigator was already on standby, keeping a close watch on Bradley and Julia. It didn't take long for me to confirm what I already suspected. Despite the countless amounts of money Bradley had given Julia over the years, both of them had been spending recklessly. They had no real savings. So, after much deliberation, they came up with a solution. They stole my luxury handbags, jewelry, and accessories, and sold them off at bargain prices to scrape together the money. Of course, the buyer was someone I had arranged. I didn't care about the money. I just needed evidence of their theft. And now I had it. Not long after, Julia arrived at my house, practically glowing with excitement. She handed me the $50,000 she had scraped together from selling my belongings, her eyes shining with anticipation. I could see it already. She was picturing herself moving into the villa, living the high life. She could barely contain herself as she asked, "Selena, did the seller say when I can move in?" I smiled at her. A slow, knowing smile. "Go home and wait for my call." According to Lily, ever since Bradley got his new car, he had been showing it off non-stop. Every day he drove around in it, parading himself around town. And of course Julia was always in the passenger seat. They made a grand spectacle of picking up Neil and Eva from school together, letting everyone see them as a happy little family. Meanwhile, Neil and Eva boasted to their classmates, saying, "This is the car our mom Julia bought for us." As for Julia, she paraded around in designer outfits at the school gate, chatting loudly with the other mothers. "Oh, I've been eyeing a villa recently," she bragged. "I'm about to buy it. Once I move in, I'll host a housewarming party. You all have to come." The other mothers, already fully aware of the truth, could barely contain their eye rolls. But out of respect for my request, they played along. Meanwhile, I had already bought the villa next door. Only, it was under my name. The next day I informed Julia that she could move in. Overjoyed, she immediately invited everyone she knew to her new housewarming party. Everyone, except me. That evening Alex's mother called me furious. "That shameless woman. I wouldn't go to her damn party even if you paid me." I chuckled, soothing her temper. "Don't be angry. I'll be there too. Let's enjoy the show together." There was a pause. Then her tone changed to something more eager. "All right, fine. I'll call everyone, we'll all be there." The next morning, Julia arrived at the villa bright and early. Through the hidden cameras I had installed, I saw her prancing around in the designer clothes and jewelry she had stolen from me. Her face was practically glowing with delight. Meanwhile, Bradley was out playing chauffeur, using his luxury car to pick up high-status parents for the party. Alex's mother arrived early, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she asked, "How interesting. Mrs. Collins is hosting a party, and yet it's Mr. Morgan who's doing the heavy lifting?" Bradley, ever the devoted fool, didn't even catch the dig. He smiled proudly. "Oh, Julia was kind enough to lend me this car. I'm her personal driver today. Of course I have to help her greet the guests." Julia, holding a glass of red wine, gracefully took Alex's mother's hand and put on her sweetest smile. "We're so lucky to have Morgan here today. She's only helping out because of Selena. In fact, to thank her and her husband, I'm planning to buy the villa next door so we can be neighbors. That way I can take even better care of Selena." I almost laughed out loud. Twisting the truth so effortlessly, was she truly this shameless? Alex's mother, struggling to keep a straight face, said, "Selena is so lucky to have a friend like you." Julia, still high on her own delusions, missed the sarcasm entirely. She giggled behind her hand, putting on a show of gracious humility. "Well, we've been friends for so many years. Now that she's blind, it's only right that I step up and help her." By now all the guests had arrived. Alex's mother narrowed her eyes and asked in a loud, pointed voice, "So, you're saying you've been helping Mrs. Morgan all these years?" The room fell into silence. Every single guest turned to look at Julia. Julia, still basking in her imaginary glory, smiled proudly. "That's right. With Selena in her condition, I honestly don't know how she'd survive without me." That was my cue. I let out a soft chuckle, then gave Lily a small nod. It was time. Lily pressed play. And suddenly, Julia's own living room became her execution stage. On the massive projector screen, the video flickered to life. Julia and Bradley appeared on the screen, laughing, cuddling, stealing kisses, all while plotting to take my money, my house, my life. They spoke freely, believing I was blind. They mocked me, insulted me. They brazenly schemed about how to trick me out of a villa and a luxury car. The very things Julia had just claimed she was selflessly giving up for me. The entire room turned to Julia. Silence. Then a gasp. Julia's face turned a violent shade of red. She looked like she had been slapped in the face with a brick. The guests began murmuring, whispering, exchanging glances of disgust and disbelief. She opened her mouth to sputter out an excuse, but it was too late. This was my moment. I stepped forward, smiling. As I stepped inside, I was greeted by her piercing scream from inside. Turn that off. No. Who the hell played this? Inside, chaos had erupted. Some of the guests had been at my Havenwood dinner and already knew the truth about Julia. Others, those who had been duped by her act, were now staring at her, whispering in shock. I strode in, my heels clicking against the marble floor, my voice cold and sharp. I did. The room fell silent. Bradley's face drained of color. Julia stood frozen, her body trembling. Bradley forced a stiff smile, his voice unnaturally high. Sweetheart, what are you doing here? Julia swallowed hard, then stammered, Selena, what is this supposed to mean? I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped forward and slapped her across the face. Hard. A sharp crack echoed through the room. Julia's head snapped to the side, her face instantly flushing red from the impact. Then, in a calm, measured voice, I said, That was for what you owe me, Julia. Bradley's expression darkened instantly. Selena, what the hell is wrong with you? He lunged toward me, but before he could lay a hand on me, my bodyguards had already pinned him down. I turned to him. Then, without hesitation, I slapped him twice. Then I kicked him right between his legs. Bradley howled in agony, his body doubling over in pain. His face twisted in rage, his voice hoarse as he cursed, Selena, you crazy bitch. Then suddenly Neil charged at me. My bodyguards quickly intercepted him, holding him back. He was red-faced, screaming in fury. You witch. You whore. How dare you hit my dad and Aunt Julia? I'll kill you. I looked at him. At the child I had carried for 9 months. At the son I had gone blind to save. And all I felt was emptiness. Julia, still cradling her burning cheek, suddenly stared at me, her eyes widening in shock. Your eyes, you can see again? When did this happen? I ignored her. Instead, I turned to Bradley, my voice steady and clear. Bradley, you know better than anyone. I despise disloyalty. As of today, we are no longer husband and wife. Then I turned to Julia. And you? Well, let's just say enjoy what's coming. Alex's mother let out a sharp scoff and folded her arms, her tone laced with satisfaction. Oh, finally. I've been wanting to say this. You two are absolute scum. Filthy, shameless cheaters. You think this will end well for you? Julia and Bradley's faces turned ashen. The whispers grew louder. Then suddenly, Bradley let out a cold, bitter laugh. He straightened up, his fake warmth completely gone. You think I ever wanted to be with you? You're nothing but a machine. A cold, emotionless workaholic. Even your own son hates you. No one could ever love a woman like you. You don't deserve a family. His words landed like knives, but I refused to flinch. And then Neil's voice rang out. Yeah. You never cared about me. You only ever scolded me and punished me. You're nothing compared to Aunt Julia. You're not even fit to be my mom. His little face was contorted in anger, mirroring Bradley's sneer. It was in that moment that I fully understood. No matter how much I had sacrificed to him, I would always be the villain. I had given him everything. And yet he stood there hating me. I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. Then I met Neil's eyes, my voice firm. All right, Neil. This is your choice. And you got exactly what you wanted. I let my words sink in. Then I delivered the final blow. After the divorce, you can stay with your father and your dear Aunt Julia. From this moment on, I am no longer your mother. I watched Bradley and Julia, observing the way their initial shock and fury slowly morphed into eerie calmness. It seemed they had resigned themselves to their fate. Bradley even let out a cold chuckle, his tone laced with mockery. Fine. Divorce it is. But we'll go through legal proceedings. As your husband, I'm entitled to half of our marital assets. The audacity. Alex's mother, already aware of the full story thanks to Lily, exploded in fury. You have got to be kidding me. You're nothing but a parasite. You've never earned a single damn penny, you've been mooching off Selena from the moment you married her, and now you dare ask for half of her money? Julia, standing beside him, snorted. Oh, come on, let's be fair here. Bradley took care of her for years. Even if he didn't contribute financially, he still put in the effort. You can't just dismiss that. Alex's mother was ready to lunge at her. I lifted a hand, stopping her. Then I turned to Lily. Lily nodded, stepping forward as she pulled out a document. A legally binding divorce agreement. She held it up for everyone to see, her voice loud and clear. This is the divorce contract that Mr. Morgan himself signed. In it, he admits to infidelity and agrees to leave the marriage with nothing. Additionally, we have reason to believe that Mr. Morgan and Ms. Collins are involved in theft. As such, we have reported the matter to the police. Bradley's eyes finally landed on the document. And then his face twisted in horror. His entire body stiffened. Then he snapped. I never signed this. This is fake. Wait, that damn car contract. Selena, you bitch. You set me up. His eyes turned bloodshot, his veins bulging with rage. He lunged toward me, but before he could take a step, police sirens wailed from outside. The officers stormed in, their voices firm and unwavering. Bradley Morgan. Julia Collins. You are under suspicion of grand theft. Please come with us for questioning. The room fell silent. Bradley froze. Julia's face drained of all color. She turned to Bradley, panic-stricken, her body trembling. Bradley? For the first time, Bradley wasn't smirking anymore. He wasn't laughing. He was finally truly terrified. Julia and her family were thrown out of the villa. My divorce from Bradley was finalized. The total value of everything Bradley and Julia had stolen from me amounted to $20 million. A small portion was still sitting in Julia's closet, but the majority had already been sold off at dirt cheap prices and spent. Despite everything, Bradley's love for Julia remained unwavering. He took full responsibility for the theft, shouldering the charges himself. He was sentenced to prison. And Julia? He protected her, ensuring she walked away free. As for Neil, he wanted nothing to do with me. Not even his father's imprisonment could change that. Given the choice, he refused to stay with me. That he chose Julia. And his hatred toward me only deepened. When we walked out of the courthouse, Neil deliberately turned toward Julia, wrapping his arms around her. With a voice sickeningly sweet, he called out for everyone to hear, "Mom." I stared at him for a moment. Then, without a word, I turned and walked away. This child, I would consider him as never having existed. Since Neil was still a minor, I was legally obligated to pay child support to Julia every month. It wasn't much, just enough to cover the basics until he turned 18. Julia had grown accustomed to luxury. Now, suddenly forced to live frugally, she couldn't handle it. At first, her attitude toward Neil remained unchanged. But as time passed, she realized she couldn't squeeze any more money out of me. Her affection quickly disappeared. Her tolerance evaporated. She began treating him with blatant cruelty. Daily ignorance. Constant scolding. She even withheld food from him. He went to bed hungry more often than not. His clothes. Hand-me-downs from Eva. Tattered. Ill-fitting. The same Neil who once flaunted his wealth to his classmates was now living in abject misery. One day he couldn't take it anymore. He came crying to me, begging, "Mom, please, let me come home." I refused to see him. Instead, I had Lily deliver my response. "You're 13 now, old enough to know right from wrong. This was your choice. No matter how difficult it is, you'll have to endure it." That said, I was still his mother. And I would fulfill my responsibility. I arranged for someone to watch over him, to ensure he was safe. If Julia went too far, I would step in. I would make sure he had food to eat, clothes to wear, and a roof over his head. I would ensure he grew up healthy. But beyond that, I would never let him return to the life of wealth and privilege he once took for granted. He would learn. He would live with the consequences of his choices. Until the day he could stand on his own. By the second year, Julia remarried, taking Eva with her. She married a mediocre man, nothing like the wealthy lifestyle she had once chased. But there was one thing she couldn't bear to give up: the child support payments I sent for Neil. So she took him along as baggage. The breaking point: by the 5th year, Bradley was released from prison. When he learned that Julia had remarried and, worse, that she had been abusing Neil, he lost control. He attacked her with a knife. He didn't kill her, but he severed one of her legs. Bradley was arrested again for aggravated assault. With no money for legal compensation, he was sent back to prison. That year Neil turned 15. And with Julia crippled, her treatment of Neil grew even worse. Her resentment boiled over and she took it out on him. Daily beatings. Abuse. Finally, I put the past aside. I removed Neil from that toxic household and brought him back home. Neil had changed. He wasn't the spoiled, arrogant child I once knew. He had learned to see people for who they truly were. So he remained distant. Just as he had in childhood, he kept a wall between us. But by now I was used to it. I had long since stopped expecting anything from him. At 18, Neil went off to college. By then my business empire had flourished. I was the wealthiest person in the city. Yet Neil never once mentioned me to anyone. He never used my name, never flaunted our connection. He had outgrown his obsession with wealth. One day I called him over. I handed him $100,000. Then, in a calm voice, I told him, "I've made my will. After my death, all of my assets will be donated. As my biological son, you won't inherit a single penny." Neil was unfazed. Gone was the petulant child who once threw tantrums for cars and villas. Instead, he simply said, "It's your money. You have the right to do whatever you want with it. I respect your choice. You don't need to tell me." I studied him for a moment. Then I smiled softly. "All right. You can go." Neil turned toward the door. Then, suddenly, his shoulders trembled. His eyes turned red. And, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, he whispered, "Mom, thank you. I'm sorry." Then, without waiting for my response, he turned and left. For the first time in 8 years, he called me Mom. I watched his retreating figure and spoke, my voice barely above a whisper. "This long overdue apology. I accept. I still wish you the best, Neil."